We're about a third of the way through the season now, and with no games this week, I thought this is a good chance to check in and see how all the teams are doing. And while some teams have been doing almost perfectly, and other teams there's not a lot of good to talk about, I thought I'd try and be really fair and give every team a pro and a con. Starting with the Adelaide 36ers. Now they're second on the ladder at 11-3, coming off of a massive win against Southeast Melbourne away. Overall, they have to be ecstatic with how they've played so far, their 3 losses being a coaching masterclass by Brian Goorjian, a 1-point thriller against Melbourne United, and then a fourth quarter capitulation against the Perth Wildcats. And my big pro for them is pretty obvious, the play of Bryce Cotton and Zylan Cheatham. I mean, Bryce Cotton's just been dominating, 27 points, 7 assists, leads the league in steals, and his pairing with Cheatham and Isaac Humphries as well has just been phenomenal. And for Zylan Cheatham, I mean, he just does whatever Adelaide need him to do. He averages 11.5 points, 10.5 rebounds, 4 assists. His points are down, but he really just does whatever's needed of him. He's had a couple of explosion games, then a couple of games where he's scored 5 or less points. But Adelaide really don't need him to score. I mean, they've already got so many other scorers. But every game this year, he's had minimum 8 rebounds. He's coming off of a 15-point, 16 rebound game against the Phoenix. Yes, Bryce Cotton is the best and the number 1 player on this team, but if they don't have Zylan Cheatham, Bryce Cotton's job is so much harder. My con for Adelaide has a little bit of an asterisk involved, but it's their bench. They rank second last in bench points at a little over 19, but it started to get fixed with having DJ Vasiljevic moving to the bench role now. It's been no secret that DJ's been a little bit frustrated and his play has definitely gone down since moving to the bench. His minutes have dropped from, 25 to 30 to sub 20 for the first couple of games off the bench, and his scoring was way down, which is not a surprise. And we only saw 3 minutes of DJ in that first half, but then he just had that explosion in the fourth quarter. He played 18 minutes thereabouts in the second half, played the majority of the fourth quarter, scored as many points himself as the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix did in that fourth quarter, where he had 17 points. And the fact that the 36ers are on a 4-game winning streak since his move to the bench means that they're trending in the right direction. It wouldn't surprise me following the FIBA break, it's Troy Brown Jr. who goes into the starting lineup just to make it a little bit easier on defense. With such an offensively minded starting 5, they were leaking points at the start of the season. DJ goes to the bench for Matt Kenyon for defensive purposes, and then they start winning. Now Isaac White in the starting 5 for a matchup with Owen Foxwell, Nathan Sobey. They win that game. Troy Brown Jr. coming into the starting 5, a known defensive specialist. He comes in, he locks up a defender. Flynn Cameron still plays the point guard. Brown Jr. can score on offense, lock down on defense. This Adelaide team is primed for a massive second half of the season. The Brisbane Bullets now, and this one was a little bit harder to find a positive for, but I found one in the end. And if I'm being honest, I'm cautiously optimistic about how they're going to look following the FIBA break. Now, yes, they're 8th on the ladder at 5-10 coming into this break, and there has been a lot of negativity around Stu Lash. Some of it warranted, some of it I just completely disagree with. The positives for the Bullets so far this season have been, 1, a little bit of the play of some of their young players, specifically Tristan Devers, but I really want to highlight Tyrell Harrison and how good of a season he's had so far. He's priming himself to be one of the best local bigs in the competition. 16.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, over 2 assists, and 1.3 blocks per game. The frustrating part about all of this is Brisbane are not doing the best job of getting him the ball and letting him show what he can do. But double figures in all but 2 of his games so far this year, including a 27-point, 15 rebound double-double in a win at Perth, really shows how good of a player he can be. He was guarding and being guarded by Joe Luala-Chul for the majority of this game and just went to town. He really seems to step up in the games where he's matched up against another elite big. That game against Perth, like I mentioned, 24-15 against Sam Menenga and the Breakers, 17 and 12 and 3 steals against Isaac Humphrey in Adelaide. Another double-double against Melbourne United. He had to step up with all of the injuries and all the chaos that was going on in Brisbane at the start of the season, and he's absolutely done that. Now, I mentioned the chaos that Brisbane's had to deal with because my con for them is just the revolving door of players that they've had through the first 15 games. Some they can control, some they can't control. I think the stat that sums it up the most obvious for them is they've had 16 players take the floor through 15 games this season. They've had 10 different starting fives, and they've lost more players than they've seemingly played. I mean, they lose Sam McDaniel in the second game, they lose Mitch Norton early, Torrey Smith-Milner went down with a broken finger, Javon Freeman-Liberty gets hurt and then he leaves, but now he's coming back. Not to mention Jalen Adams is in and then he's playing well and then he comes off the bench and then he's not playing well and then he plays well again and then he doesn't play well and then he's gone. And of course the devastating injury to Casey Prather. This year for the Bullets has been a roller coaster to say the least. But with Freeman-Liberty coming back and the signing of Terry Taylor, not to mention how good Tyrell Harrison's playing, Dakota Mathias is getting his legs under him, Sam McDaniel is expected to be back soon. Look, they're starting with a massive handicap. Are they going to make the playoffs? Probably not. Can they turn this season around, at least to make it look better than it does right now? I think they can. The Cairns Taipans now, and it's been a really frustrating start to the year with them. They're stone cold last on the ladder, 3 wins, 12 losses through their first half of the season. But if we're being really fair, the entire start of the season has an asterisk on it, with no Sam Wardenberg. We still haven't seen him on the floor yet, and likely won't until around Christmas. And while the obvious pro is the play of Jack McVeigh, specifically in the last couple of games where he's had back-to-back 30-plus point performances, but I want to highlight Mojave King as my pro for the Cairns Taipans this year. Now, he's been a really curious case in basketball for the last few seasons. Started with the Taipans as a next star, then was transferred to the Adelaide 36ers for his second year of his next star's contract. Went and played in the G League, got drafted in the second round of the NBA, but barely touched the floor. Since then, he kind of floated around, didn't take up offers, things like that. Now he comes back to the Cairns Taipans as an injury replacement for the rest of the year and has absolutely lit it up. 14 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, including a game where he scored a career-high 32 points on 13 of 16 shooting. That was the first game he started for the Taipans, and he's been in the starting lineup ever since, playing big minutes. I mean, 42 minutes in the overtime loss against Adelaide, 33 minutes against the Phoenix, just playing a really pivotal role, seeming like he's freed up, he's got, the ability to do whatever he wants really in this Cairns team, and alongside Jack McVeigh, pairs really, really well. This is a guy who a couple of years ago was on NBA radars. I mean, he got drafted into the NBA. His rights are currently owned by the New Orleans Pelicans. And I mean, with how they're going at the moment, they could use a guy like Mojave King. But if he keeps performing the way that he is, shooting the ball really, really well, he's shooting 52% from the field, 44% from 3. I mean, he's not great from the free throw line, but if he can keep up these numbers and up that free throw shooting percentage, as well as continuing to work hard on defense, then he's not going to be in the NBL much longer because he'll be over in the States playing in the NBA. My con for the Cairns Taipans is the play of their imports. They have not been living up to the title of import. To an extent, I can give a pass to Marcus Lee. He was brought in to be the backup for Sam Wardenberg and play minutes off the bench, kind of give a different look. But the situation has meant that he has to be in the starting 5 and he's not getting a whole lot of time on the floor. But that's because he keeps on fouling out. I mean, in the 15 games that they've played so far, Marcus Lee has fouled out in 7 of them. And in another 5 of them, he's had to sit for extended periods with foul trouble. And look, Adam Ford has switched around the starting 5 a little bit. They've had him coming off the bench in a couple of games, even having him as the 3rd guy off the bench. Andrew Andrews was brought in late to this team and took a little bit to get his legs under him. He's looked okay for the most part. He's been pretty clearly frustrated the last few games with his team's performances and kind of not living up to the expectation that he sets for them. But Admiral Schofield is a really interesting case because he doesn't look comfortable on the floor physically. There's some kind of injury that's been hampering him that Cairns haven't really spoken about. but it's really affected his performance, specifically in the last few games. He's had as many points as he has personal fouls in their last 2 games, 9. Now, I'm not saying Cairns need to cut any of their imports, but I think the FIBA break for them is going to be a lot of gelling and kind of working together to figure out how to get the best out of what they're in. They're already on the right path with really letting Jack McVay just kind of run this offense and do whatever he wants. 70 plus points in their last 2 games total is what he needs to be performing and is what Cairns need to be in the best position. And with 3 single game rounds following the FIBA break, games against Illawarra, Tasmania and New Zealand, and I think they really need to win at least 2 of those games if they want to be any competition in the back end of the year. The Illawarra Hawks now, and it's been a frustrating start to the season for them. Coming off of their championship, they lost 2 of their imports, and who was going to be their starting point guard gets injured in the blitz. They counter that by signing NBA veteran JaVale McGee, who also missed the entire preseason because of pneumonia, so he comes in with only a couple of weeks until the season starts. And that was pretty obvious with the way that they were starting the year. They're 4-9 right now, still with Sam Froling to come back, hopefully around the new year, but they're in a pretty tough position sitting second last on the ladder. The obvious pro for them is the play of JaVale McGee. 21.5 points, 10.5 rebounds, 2 blocks per game. Obviously in the MVP conversation, but with the results that the Hawks are getting, probably not in the top 5. But this is the type of player that we've never seen in the NBL before. A guy who's a genuine 7-footer, as athletic as he is, and a threat anytime he touches the ball. I mean, we've even seen him take a whole bunch of threes, which is really surprising. But he gobbles up any rebounds that are anywhere near him on the floor, and he's an immediate double or even triple team anytime he touches the ball in the paint. Now, some teams have started to sort of figure out how to defend him well. I mean, he's only had 1 single-figure game, and that was in the demolition that the Sydney Kings provided them. But he's also had a 37-point, 14-rebound double-double against Jesse Edwards and Melbourne United. We've seen the frustration start to get to him in a couple of games to the point where he isn't even really looking to score. A lot of that is because of how Illawarra are set up and, kind of not trying to exploit him as much as possible. But this is a guy who can get 40 and 20 if he tries hard enough. And we've seen the connection that him and Dave O'Hickey have put together in their short time on the floor so far. When those two are rolling at their best, this Illawarra team can beat anyone, as we've seen already. My con kind of rolls in with my pro as well, which is a little bit weird, but this Illawarra team have completely changed the way they played from their championship winning season to this one. Yes, they lost some key pieces, most notably Trey Cal and Darius Days, but they completely revamped their ethos with the bringing in JaVale McGee. In NBL 25, the Hawks were 3rd in pace, 1st in offensive rating, 3rd in defensive rating, and had a 12.5% plus net rating. Basically, this team punished you on defense and then ran it down on offense, scoring fast break points and just not letting the defense set up. They had long arms, they got in the way, they made life really, really uncomfortable. They averaged 101 points per game last season. This year they're averaging 88. And while their pace is still up, their offensive rating is 2nd last and their defensive rating is 3rd last. Having Tyler Harvey running their point did not work. Bringing Davo back in made a massive difference, at least at first, but they're still kind of stagnant on offense. They seemingly don't have a lot of ideas other than try and get JaVale McGee the ball. And in the last couple of games, we've seen them not even really look at JaVale in the low block as often. For a team with as much talent as they have, I refuse to write them off, but they're going to have to hotfix this ship pretty quick. Melbourne United now, and what can we really say about them? Top of the ladder, 13-2 to start the season, looked a lot better following those losses. They've had a couple of close games, but with the amount of crunch time players that they have, there are so many options on the floor that you just can't guard them all. My pro for them is just their consistency. The number 1 ranked offense and the number 1 ranked defense. They do it 94 feet, they do it for 40 minutes, they make your life a living hell. And they do it by committee. I mean, they have 5 players in double figures, no one averaging over 20 points. Milton Doyle, Chris Goulding, Tyson Walker, Jesse Edwards, Finn Delaney. I mean, Tanner Krebs, who started a bunch of games when Goulding was injured and then when he came back at first. Dash Daniels, this young gun who's still developing his game and playing some really good defense. Fab Krislovic coming off the bench and being just the ultimate team guy. And we've only seen them with their full roster for 1 game. I mean, Chris Goulding was injured to start the season, then Shaylee gets hurt, Shaylee comes back for 1 game and then gets hurt again. And my con for Melbourne United is exactly that. We've only seen them at full strength for 1 game. So how does it go come crunch time? Who's on the floor? Who's on the bench? Like I mentioned, Shaylee, he's kind of been in and out of the team. He missed the entire preseason, dealing with a couple of issues stemming from his concussions that he had. He didn't play in the off-season. His first game of the year, he came off the bench. Then he went back into the starting lineup, then back off the bench following his injury. So how do the rotations work for Melbourne United? We've seen Dean Vickerman go to the end of his bench playing players number 12 and 13 in the first quarter. Following the losses, he did tighten up that rotation a lot more, to the point where we're not seeing a whole lot of Malith Machar. We're not seeing a lot of Tom Wilson, and the DPs are barely, if at all, getting on the floor, Tom Coppins and Campbell Blogg. Is that going to play a factor in the back end of the season? Is fatigue going to become an issue? I really doubt it, but who knows? Look, that's a bit of a stretch for a con, but when your team is top of the ladder, only lost 2 games, and quickly righted the ship after that, there's not really much that we can choose from. The New Zealand Breakers have to be one of the most frustrating teams in the NBL. They're a team that I thought were a dark horse to sneak into the top 4 this season, but right now they sit at 7th on the ladder, 5 and 10, just the complete mark of inconsistency. There have been 2 really clear bright spots for them though, and that's Parker Jackson-Cartwright and Sam Menenga. I mean, for PJC, his points are a little bit down on his last couple of seasons, but he's averaging 8 assists per game, alongside 4.5 rebounds, and his shooting's down. He's had to do a lot more shooting than he has in seasons gone by, but he continues to put up numbers. I mean, 20 plus in the majority of the games so far this year. He had that ridiculous 20.17 assist double-double in their massive win over the Illawarra Hawks, and he's continued to put up not numbers that are as ridiculous as that, but he's had a 21 and 10 game against Adelaide. He's had 22 points, 9 assists in that loss against Perth. He continues to do absolutely everything he can to try and drag this team kicking and screaming to victories that just aren't coming. For Sam Menenga, I mean, if he isn't the most improved player this season, it's because he just stopped playing in the second half of the year. 17 points, 7.5 rebounds, about a steal, half a block. I mean, he is playing the best basketball of his life right now. And he's taking a lot more threes now. He's really expanding his game. Last year, through 29 games, he shot 82 threes for the entire season. So far this year, less than half the games played, he's already shot 58. He's becoming a genuine threat from 3. And we saw it in that game against Illawarra, forcing JaVale McGee out of the paint, making him guard that shot, and really just blowing up what the Hawks were really trying to do. He has been a little bit inconsistent. He's had a couple of single-figure games, but then he's also exploded for 20 plus. My con for New Zealand is just their complete lack of consistency, and this isn't a recent thing. They haven't won 2 games in a row in over a year. November 2 and November 4, 2024 was the last time that they won consecutive games. And it must be so frustrating being a fan of this team, being associated with this team, because at their best, they are really, really good. And at their worst, they are bottom feeders. We've seen them play games where they only have 2 or 3 turnovers for the entire game, and then we've seen them play games where they have 25 turnovers. The Jekyll and Hyde nature of this New Zealand team needs to be studied, because I cannot believe that it is still going on. It's been an interesting start to the season for the Perth Wildcats. They sit 4th on the ladder at 8 and 6. And while it took them a little bit of time to get rolling, they're looking okay right now. In the wake of losing Bryce Cotton in the off-season, they waited a long time to sign an import point guard, eventually landing on Mason Jones, who just didn't fit the team. So he's gone. They bring in David Duke Jr., who's getting his legs under him now and looking really good. That being said, my pro for them, and there's a little bit of recency bias in this, is the play of Christian Doolittle. He has stepped up massively to fill the void of points that Bryce Cotton would score every game. And specifically in his last 3 games is where he's really stepped up. 24 points, 30 points, and 20 points in his last 3 games. In his most recent game against Melbourne, 20 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists. Just really doing everything he can and nearly got them over the line against the benchmark in the league. Pretty much all of his stats are up from the last couple of seasons as well. More points, more shots per game, twice as many threes per game, more rebounds, and more assists. It took him a little bit of time, but now he's realised that he's the number 1 guy on this Wildcats team. He needs to set the standard, and that's what he's done recently. And they're looking as good as they have this season. They're in the top 4, coming off of a narrow loss against Melbourne United after a 3-game winning streak. My con for this team is the same thing that I said before the season even started around the Blitz. Who is the point guard for this team? At the start of the year, we saw Mason Jones. We've seen Ben Henschel. We've seen Elijah Pepper. We've seen Dante Rousseau-Nance before they eventually settled on the development player, Jaron Riley. Now, no disrespect to him, he played really good. He played out of his skin in that starting point guard role. And when he comes back from injury, most likely he will be back in the starting team. But when you're going from Bryce Cotton to a development player as your starting point guard, that's a big difference. And more importantly, he's out. So what are you going to do in the meantime? We've seen David Duke Jr. be in the starting lineup and have the ball in his hands a lot more, but he's a lot more of a 2 guard than he is a point guard. And you can see that it's affecting him a little bit. It means he can't get into the rhythm of his game as much. In the game against Melbourne, 7 points on 2 of 9 shooting. He did have the 5 assists, but he can't get his own game going. In the game before against Tasmania, he looked good. He had his best game. 19 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. He shot 6 of 9 from the field. That's really good. But imagine if he wasn't having to set everything up for the rest of the team. Imagine if he could play off the ball and then kind of get the ball back when he wanted to make something happen and didn't have to worry about the rest of his team. I think when Jaron really comes back, it would not surprise me if we see Ben Henschel go to the bench and be that spark plug, be able to make things happen off the bench alongside Elijah Pepper, where they can just focus on scoring and setting up the rest of the team when he's got the bench unit on. The Southeast Melbourne Phoenix have exceeded so many people's expectations, mine included. 3rd on the ladder right now, 9-4, coming off of that tough loss against Adelaide, but have been dominant in pretty much every other game. Their only losses of the season so far are against the 2 teams that are above them on the ladder, and they're blowing out the rest of the teams below them. And so much of that this season has to do with their pro, Nathan Sobey, playing the best basketball of his career. Keep in mind, this is his 12th season in the NBL, and he's averaging 0.1 less than his career high in points per game. He's averaging the most steals he ever has at 1.7, 4 assists, taking more shots than he ever has, shooting at 43% from the field, 36% from 3. Just absolutely dominant, probably 2nd in MVP ranking right now. And after a frustrating season last year where he kind of had to play the point a lot of the time and have the ball in his hands, now he can play off the ball, he can set his feet and be a spot-up shooter, and then get to the ring. We've seen a whole lot of that this season, especially in this Josh King coaching style, where it's very run and gun, the offense is super fluid and super loose. It allows him to be his natural self and play the game that he wants to, which is fast and loose and pushing the ball in transition. And it's working for the Phoenix. And I think especially alongside Angus Glover, who's averaging double figures for the first time in his career, the pairing that these two have put together is perfect because Glover comes off the bench, Sobey starts, but in crunch time, they're on the floor together the majority of it. So you've got 2 elite shooters, 2 snipers either side of the court the floor stretches out, becomes a lot bigger, allows Sobey to get to the ring, allows Geordie Hunter to be aggressive at the basket, allows John Brown to work in the mid-range. This team that Josh King has put together is perfect for the style that he wants to play, and there's a very good reason that they're in the top 4 right now. It was pretty tough to pick a con for the Phoenix, but I'm going to go back to, the question that I asked before the Blitz is about their half-court offense. Now, this Phoenix team is built around getting steals and points in transition, running the ball down, fast break baskets, not allowing the opposition to set up. That's how they score the majority of their points every game. But come the pointy end of the season, when you're only playing against the best teams, you can't rely on that to score all of your baskets. I mean, we look at the teams that they've lost to so far this season, the Adelaide 36ers and Melbourne United. Both of those teams are in the top 4 for fewest turnovers per game. And while I've already said Melbourne are the best defensive team, Adelaide are 5th, right in the middle of the pack, and that game was close. So when you're not forcing the opposition to turn the ball over as much and they're allowed to set up their defense, how do the Phoenix look? And specifically against the very good defensive teams and the very tight ball handling teams, the Phoenix have been a little bit exposed in their half court. The defensive side of the ball has and never will be an issue for the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix under Josh King. The offense? There's some holes. Well, it took the Sydney Kings 7 games to figure it out. Now they're on the right track. 5th on the ladder, 7-6 to start the season, and looking good when the ball is in the hands of Xavier Cooks. My pro for them is the thing that I've been preaching since the start of the year. When the ball is in the hands of Xavier Cooks on offense and he's allowed to pull the strings, that's when they're at their best. Now, I don't want to question Brian Goorjian as a coach, but I'm interested in his decision to have Cooks playing the 5 at the start of the season. He did have a couple of pretty good games, 21 points and 9 rebounds in the loss to Melbourne United, 16 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists in the big win against Perth, but his explosion in the back half of the first half of the season has been not surprising to anyone who understands basketball. And well, yes, he had an absolute stinker against Tasmania, but the majority of Sydney did have a stinker as well. I think the best example of Cooks dominating playing that point forward position was that game against Illawarra. He only had 13 points, but 7 rebounds and 5 assists as well, and you could see the chess match. JaVale McGee goes off the floor, Cooks can then slide to the 5, but every time that JaVale was on the floor, it was either Tim Suarez or Hunter Goodrick at that 5 spot. Minimize the amount of defense Xavier Cooks has to play in the low block kind of back to the basket style, and allow him on offense if he's being guarded by the opposition center. Allow him to bring the ball up. Little things like that. He's a really smart player and a really good decision maker, so let him pull the strings and Sydney are going to win a whole lot more games. My negative for the Sydney Kings shouldn't come as too big of a surprise, but it's the Kendrick Davis, Matthew Dellavedova situation in the backcourt. Anyone that says that Daly needs to retire just clearly doesn't watch basketball, or if you do, I don't trust your opinion. Because Sydney's game against Tasmania was the clearest explanation of why the Kings need Daly. And I do think that Daly should keep starting as well. I think he's very important to this team. I just think he doesn't need to be as big of an emphasis on offense. He's really struggled with his shot this season, but he's still an elite defender and an elite point guard. And lastly, the Tasmania Jack Jumpers. Now, while Brisbane have had the most frustrating start to the season, Tasmania are not too far away in second spot. With injuries and unavailability, they've finally almost got their roster back together, and hopefully they will be back to 100% following the FIBA break. 6th on the ladder, 6-9 to start the season, but positive signs. And speaking of positive signs, my pro for them is the play of Josh Bannon this season. He is absolutely flourishing in Tasmania. Almost 16 points a game, almost 10 rebounds a game, really dominating in that 4 spot, and then occasionally sliding down to the 5 with Will Magnay being out. He had a little bit of a shaky start to the season with a couple of poor shooting performances, but since then, double figures in every single game, a career high 29 points against Perth, to go along with a couple of monster double-doubles, 16 and 14 against Adelaide, 12 and 12 against Cairns, and while yes, these were all coming in losses, their team wasn't at 100%, the starting five was all out of whack, not to mention the weird situation with TJ Starks. But with David Johnson back in the lineup and getting back to 100%, Will Magnay back, Majuk Deng back from a bit of a leg injury, not to mention the continued superstar game from Bryce Hamilton and Tiger Campbell, this team's looking okay. The FIBA break has come at a pretty good time for them to get Anthony Dremic back in the lineup, and they can go back to their normal starting five and their normal rotations. But with Josh Bannon playing the way that he is, flourishing in this first year down in Tassie, and with Scott Roth at the helm, I don't ever want to count them out. My con for the Jack Jumpers is that they have not been able to get wins at home. 2-6 down in Tasmania this season. They have a better record on the road than they do at home, including a couple of games down at the Silverdome. I think Tasmania need to stop playing at the Silverdome because they cannot get wins there. They say defend the island. They have not been doing a great job of that so far this season.